Greetings, dear chess fans and experts. This is FIDE Master Max Omariev with you, and today we will witness perhaps the most ingenious first move in the history of Fischer Random chess. This move was performed, of course, by the world champion Magnus Carlsen. And this move is connected with the Grob's attack. In the previous video, I talked about the Fischer Random World Championship format. Go and check it out if you haven't yet. Wesley so sensationally didn't know the rules of castling, and he was the reigning champion at the time. And now we'll look at the game between Hikaru Nakamura and Magnus Carlsen. In their first mini-match, Hikaru Nakamura played white, and he plays b3. For those who don't know what Fischer Random chess is, I'll clarify it just in case, because people often ask why the chess pieces are arranged so strangely. The difference from classical chess is precisely in the fact that here, the arrangement is random. There are 960 variations on how the pieces may originally stand. That's why this kind of chess is also called Chess 960. This is done in order to eliminate the factor of memorizing openings, so that already from the first moves, an independent game began. And that's why, already with the first move, Magnus Carlsen simply amazed the whole world. Let's see, you're probably already in anticipation of what he did, and he sacrificed a piece. White activates their queen, also opening the way for the bishop, and Magnus Carlsen plays g5. This is a move in the spirit of Grob's attack, Black Grob. And as we know, Magnus Carlsen likes to open up with this attack. But in this situation, it looks completely crazy, because after g5, the bishop on the h8 square hangs. White can easily take it. Hikaru gave it some thought and decided that it was better not to mess with the champion. And let's find out why. Why didn't he take this bishop? It looks so appealing and defenseless. The whole problem is that the queen is trapped. The champ calculated everything. After knight f6, the queen is attacked by the rook. He has to play queen g7, since the h7 pawn is also protected. Now rook g8, and the only move is queen h6, and the queen wants to move to the h3 square. We need to take that loophole away from him. d5. The bishop activates and shells the h3 square. And now the queen doesn't have a single cell where it can move to get free. And inevitably, the next move is rook g6, after which the queen drops. As a result, black is left with an extra queen and a winning position. That's such a brilliant idea of how to lure the opponent's queen already on the first move. I haven't seen anything like that. He sacrificed an entire piece on the first move. Hikaru didn't fall for it and played bishop b2. Exchange followed and b6. The question is, could white also sacrifice a piece in return? Play g4? I think you can guess that the situation is a bit different here. We could take that bishop after knight f3, play queen g2. On rook g1, queen h3. Now, first of all, there's no black squared bishop to cover h6. Second, there's a pawn on g5. Even if there were a bishop here, d4 would be useless. And accordingly, the queen escapes through the h6 square. For example, on rook g3, queen h6. Anyway, this idea didn't work here, so Hikaru had to settle for some more modest solutions. And in fact, he didn't really play it very well. f4. This move is logical in its own way. It attacks the f-file, clinging to that pawn, because precisely in the Grob's attack, one of the meanings of the pawn move is provocation. It calls a strike on itself to piss off the opponent. Apparently, Magnus succeeded. g4 followed, so the knight can't go anywhere. This is exactly the flaw of g4. The pawn has an even better position now. Knight c3, bishop b7, attacking g2. So he has to defend somehow, which is not so easy. e4 at the cost of sacrificing a pawn. Somehow, Hikaru Nakamura redeems himself here. Knight e2. White can't play g3 yet because the bishop hangs. Therefore, knight e2. But Magnus deprives Hikaru of that opportunity. He plays g3, sacrifices this pawn. He's already made 3 moves with a g-pawn. Neither queen nor bishop moved. He only played with one pawn and still has a great position. That's the skill of the champion. hg, knight f6. It was more accurate for him to play h5 to take this pawn after g4, and merge the pawns into one pawn island. The pawn would be stronger here, but instead Magnus plays knight f6 and Hikaru intelligently sacrifices a pawn. After all, he'd slow down, for example, by playing… well, you can't castle here because the knight is in danger here. Okay, if he'd played queen c3, the knight g4 follows, and that's it. The h1 bishop will forever remain in that box. It will never be free again. Black wants to play f5 at some point. The bishop will remain in the corner until the end of time, just imprisoned. So Hikaru plays g4. It's absolutely right. He sacrifices a pawn back for the sake of activating the bishop. Now, g3, attacking the queen. The bishop's protected, queen retreats, and long castling. Good decision, but if you take the knight here, it won't do much, because after rook e1, white's attack is wild here. Queen can move to b5, for instance. And then the beauty from Hikaru's side starts. Bang! He sacrifices the rook. Rook e1 check. The king can't move to f6, and notice how treacherously the black rook stands behind their king, not allowing it to retreat behind the pawns to hide. It has to move forward. It can't move to f6 because there's a queen. It has to move forward, but there's already a mating net. Queen d4 check, and white delivers such a mate. Knight e5 is also not that good, because here black is down a queen. In general, Hikaru competently sacrificed his knight. Perhaps Magnus didn't consider this circumstance from afar, and thanks to this castling, the position equalizes. Queen f6 followed, knight c3, knight c6. The world champion castles. Yeah, he has an extra pawn, but still white has an excellent bishop. Plus, the h7 pawn is not so strong. Queen a3 follows. Black has some weaknesses here. The a7 pawn and e7 pawn hang. The a7 pawn's protected, but Magnus doesn't have time to protect the other one. Hikaru Nakamura wins back a pawn, and as a result, the position soon began to simplify, and came to a fairly logical result, a draw. Let me fast forward to the end. That's how the opponents repeated the position, and the game ended in a draw. And before we move on to the next game, I recommend that you subscribe to our Telegram channel, where we post only the latest news in the world of chess. The link is in the description down below. In the return game, Magnus Carlsen played white. He also opened up with b4. Hikaru played b3, but the meaning is the same, opening the way to the queen and bishop. Hikaru didn't sacrifice the bishop, he played d5, which is more conceptual and solid, but here's a little spoiler, he got a bad position. Not right away, but gradually. Here, yes, he sort of attacks the queen. That looks good. So far, he's doing quite well. After b5, you can see that the a6 knight has a questionable position. The a7 pawn is backward. White is structurally dominant. After bishop d7, c5 was threatening, so it's a competent preventative retreat. Rook c8, d4 to prevent c5. In general, there are two weak pawns here. Knight on a6, the d7 bishop is not so good either. Yes, white also has a number of bad pieces. The a3 bishop is restricted by this pawn. Black seems to have some activity, but structurally they're worse. a5 is played by Hikaru. He realizes that after rook a1, white will double up on the a-file. They will press on, and this chronic weakness will be like a nasty callus getting on his nerves, so he gets rid of the pawn at once, expecting an active contour play. Now he plays queen c7. The pawn hangs, but Magnus defends it. Rook a8, rook a1, rook b8, rook c1. Magnus prepares pressure on the c6 pawn. In general, even here Hikaru could play quite accurately and win back the pawn. Knight takes d4, the rook attacks the bishop. After cd, rook b2. If we play rook takes c6, winning a pawn, then queen a7. Still, black has a very bad initiative here. The d4 pawn hangs. The white pieces are in a bit of a jam. Bishop d7 is threatening with winning the exchange. Overall, there's some problems. In general, the position is objectively closer to equality. Instead, Hikaru plays knight to e4. This is a bad decision. After this, Magnus begins to accumulate an advantage. c5 is played. This is an attempt to get rid of the backward pawn. Rook c2. He just defended the bishop, and something like knight takes d4 doesn't work because his bishop's protected. c4, knight f3. The knight decided to move to a different position because it's done its work here. Bishop a3. The white bishop has finally become active. White has a big extra pawn. It would seem that the world champion is about to beat Hikaru. Here's an alarming moment. It seems that the black has a fork. Queen e4 check, but so far it gives nothing much because the rook is protected. But after bishop c5, Hikaru plays rook b3, interrupting this vital connection. Now the rook is without protection and queen e4 is a real threat. The world champion had 5.5 minutes on the clock, but he played a6. He thought almost half of his time reserve and didn't see such a simple threat. Some kind of blind spot appeared to him, a residual image. An image that the rook is protected, he remembered that, and he didn't see the move queen e4 as a threat. He thought that the rook was protective. Nothing was threatening, but in the end he just blundered the rook massively. After that, Magnus was on a hard tilt. He sat there for a few minutes and grieved. In the end, he lost the game, of course, because he was down a rook. Yes, no quality here, but still the position is hopeless because the king goes to the b3 square, c3 will be taken. He'll have to give up his bishop, and the pawn will go through. And this is how Hikaru Nakamura won his mini-match against the world champion. Well, you must agree that the first game was simply genius after the first move. In the second game, Hikaru was lucky, but as they say, the lucky ones are the strongest, so we should not neglect his merits. This result, he made a lot of efforts. And I thank you for your attention. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give this video a like and don't forget to hit the bell button as well to make sure you don't miss any of the upcoming videos. Keep playing and studying chess, and I'll see you in the next video.